he will be aware of the potential threat Chinese-built buses may pose. And given that there are excellent UK-made zero-emission buses built in Northern Ireland at Wrightbus, will he liaise with the Department for Transport and mayors here in GB to ensure that purchases of those buses with no security risk is infinitely preferable to those made in China?
Well, I join the honourable gentleman in drawing attention to the wonderful zero-emission buses that are being produced at Wrightbus, which I've had the pleasure of visiting, I think, 2 or 3 times. They're brilliant. One sees them on the streets in the rest of the United Kingdom, and there's a very good reason to buy UK-made buses from Northern Ireland so we can see more people travelling on them, and that is an option that is open to local authorities.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Now, the Northern Ireland Affairs Select Committee has taken evidence from Lord Murphy regarding his review, and his review of the Windsor Framework has made some very important recommendations that could support GB businesses moving goods to Northern Ireland. Can he update the House on his considerations of the Murphy review?
Well, I am continuing, Mr Speaker, to give careful consideration both to what Lord Murphy has said, the Independent Monitoring Panel, the FSB, and other recommendations. There's a lot of similarity in the points that are made about steps the government could take to provide better, easier to access guidance for businesses to enable them to move goods from Great Britain to Northern Ireland, and we will set that all out when we formally respond to his review, which we must do early next year.
Shadow Minister Mike Wood.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Article 16 of the Northern Ireland Protocol says that where we experience diversion of trade, then we may take unilateral action. Now, the Secretary of State will be well aware that 3 reports in the past month have noted significant trade diversion affecting trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So can he be clear with the House? Just how much trade diversion is he willing to stomach before he uses the powers he has under Article 16?
I would say to the honourable gentleman, there are now 15,000 businesses that have registered under the UK Internal Market Scheme. 97% of lorries moving from GB to Northern Ireland do not face any in-person checks at all. The goods are flowing, the goods are moving. It is in the end for businesses to decide to whom they sell and from where they purchase. But the Northern Ireland economy is doing extremely well, which shows that the problems that, and there are some, are not affecting its overall strength.
Dr. Breeton.
Question number 3, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, Northern Ireland's creative industries are thriving and an important source of growth, a topic I have discussed with Northern Ireland executive ministers. Whether it is Derry Girls, Game of Thrones, Trespasses, Blue Lights or Line of Duty, which has just been renewed and will be filmed in Belfast, producers choose Northern Ireland for its world-class talent and studios. To coin a phrase, Mr Speaker, it's a sector that's sucking diesel.
Mr Speaker, Disability History Month begins tomorrow, and I'm delighted that the Creative Diversity Network now reports the doubling of disabled people on and off screen since 2018 to 9% across the UK. The phenomenal BBC film An Irish Goodbye is one such example, starring Down syndrome ambassador James Martin and filmed in Northern Ireland. What is the Minister doing to ensure a further drive to double disability again on and off screen?
My honourable friend speaks with enormous experience and I know wrote an impactful report employing the changemakers. I agree that expanding opportunities for disabled people to take part in creative industries is important. As my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport often says, talent exists everywhere, but opportunity does not. That is why I'm pleased with that the Creative Industries New Entrances programme, delivered in partnership between Screen NI, the BBC and the Northern Ireland Executive, is working to broaden access for disabled actors.
Jim Shannon.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Minister for that answer and also thank him for his energy and interest in Northern Ireland. We hope to have him in Strangford shortly for a visit. Between 2019 and 2022 there was an increase in economic value by 19% for the Northern Ireland film sector. There is potential for much more. The beautiful Ards Peninsula where I live in, not because it's beautiful because I live there, it's beautiful before I ever lived there, and in my constituency of Strangford, there is potential for much more. How does the Northern Ireland Office and the Minister intend to further work with Film ANI to promote the high quality and the lower costs that Northern Ireland have? We have lots to offer. Let's take advantage of it.
Shannon, the movie, I think. Come on with this.
If you're directing it, Mr. Speaker, I look forward to my visit to Strangford. I don't see enough of the honourable member in this House. The creative industries in Northern Ireland are booming, as he says, and they're backed all of the way by this government. We have a modern industrial strategy, a 10-year plan to back our strengths and unlock potential. The government has committed to increasing investment in creative industries to £31 billion by 2035.
Sam Russell.
Before, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 4 and 6 together. The 2023 Legacy Act was rejected by all the major Northern Ireland political parties, as well as by our domestic courts, victims and survivors, and by many veterans who saw it as an affront to the rule of law that they sought to protect. The government took a significant step in fulfilling our commitment to repeal and replace the Act by introducing the Troubles Bill, which received its second reading yesterday.
Rushworth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to represent a community with a lot of veterans, many of whom served in Northern Ireland. Can the Secretary of State tell me who is he engaging with to make sure that the protections for our veterans in the Legacy Act are as strong and effective as possible?
Well, we have those protections have been drawn up following extensive consultation with veterans' organisations, and I gave the House a commitment yesterday evening that I will continue to talk to veterans, to the Royal British Legion and to the Veterans Commissions and others to make sure we get these right.
Sir Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents Colin and Wendy Parry, whose 12-year-old son Tim, along with 3-year-old Jonathan Ball, were murdered in the 1993 Warrington bombing, and they've waited over 30 years for justice. Will the Secretary of State ensure that the government acts on the extracts of the Shawcross report and the 2018 Northern Ireland APPG recommendations and work across government to deliver justice for Libyan-sponsored IRA terrorism? And will he meet with me to discuss these matters?
Secretary of State.
Well, the whole House would once again want to express its sympathy to all the families affected by that terrible bombing. The government and predecessor governments have raised this issue with the Libyan authorities. It is a difficult process engaging with them. There are complications to do with the way in which their assets are held. This is a lead for the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office, and I will make sure that the appropriate minister hears the request that my honourable friend has made.
Alex Easton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Secretary of State, isn't it the reality that this legislation has failed to win the confidence of many who served, and that's what is now needed? Are clear, robust protections against repeated investigations so that we honour our veterans in practice and not just in rhetoric?
Well, I say to the honourable gentleman, those protections, including against repeated investigations, are clearly set out in the bill that the House gave a second reading to yesterday, and I hope that as people come to understand that they're there and how they work, they will offer the reassurance that he is looking for.
Jim Allister.
Yesterday in the second reading, the Secretary of State gave an undertaking that he would not appoint any paramilitaries to the Victims and Survivors Group. In light of that undertaking, will he now underwrite it by indicating that he will accept an amendment to put into statutory form that there cannot be any paramilitary serving on the Victims and Survivors Group? If his undertaking is good, then let's make it even better by putting in statute.
Well, I think from memory, Mr. Speaker, I gave that undertaking 3 times at the dispatch box yesterday, and I hope that it would provide the honourable member with the assurance that he is looking for, because I'm quite clear no one with that record is going to be appointed to the Victims and Survivors panel.
Mr Speaker, yesterday, along with the Veterans Minister, I met with a group of Special Forces veterans based in Cornwall. The Legacy Act's immunity scheme, which would have enabled immunity for terrorists and other key provisions, were ruled against by our domestic courts. Isn't it the case that any new government would have had to have dealt with this?
Well, that is indeed the case. My honourable friend is absolutely right. It was quite wrong to have brought forward legislation to seek to give immunity to terrorists, which is what the last government's Legacy Act did, and that is probably the principal reason why it had no support in Northern Ireland, including from victims and survivors, because there is a fundamental principle: we believe in the rule of law and it should apply to everyone, and that is why the government is acting in the legislation to finally, and the remedial order, to finally lay that failed attempt at immunity to rest.
Gregory Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I ask the Secretary of State whether was the Irish Deputy Prime Minister Simon Harris wrong when he said that there were no new protections for veterans in the Troubles Bill?
Well, there clearly are new protections. There clearly are new protections for veterans in the Troubles Bill set out throughout the legislation that were never in the previous legislation that the last government passed, and we've laid them out to the House, and the veterans community and others can see clearly what they are.
Alex Burkhardt, Shadow Secretary of State.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On the 15th of August 1998, in Omagh, the real IRA murdered 29 people, including a woman who was pregnant with twins. It was the deadliest attack of the Troubles and the most wicked. Following the 2021 recommendation of Mr. Justice Horner, the last Conservative government launched the Omagh inquiry into whether there was anything that UK state authorities could have done to prevent the bombing. But the bombers planned and launched their attack from the Republic of Ireland. And this was why Mr. Justice Horner also said there needed to be an independent inquiry in the Republic to ask whether Irish state authorities themselves could have done anything. Given that the UK's inquiry was announced 3 years ago, has the Secretary of State raised the question of an inquiry in the South with his counterparts on his recent trip to Dublin?
Well, I have in my conversations with the Irish government raised that question. It is, of course, for the Irish government to decide whether they wish to hold a public inquiry, but as the honourable gentleman will be well aware, the Irish government has committed to cooperate fully with the inquiry the last government established, both through the Memorandum of Understanding on the provision of information and the commitment they have made to legislate to allow witnesses to give evidence to it.
Now, look, I thank the Secretary of State for his answer, and I am aware that the Republic is sharing information with our inquiry. But the Secretary of State will be aware that the Omagh inquiry is only capable of answering questions about what UK state authorities did and did not do. But 4 years ago, Mr. Justice Horner said that there needed to be a parallel inquiry in the South. The victims and families recognise it. Does the Secretary of State recognise it?
Well, I recognise both what the judge said in his judgment 4 years ago, and I strongly support what the last government did to establish a public inquiry. But it is a matter for the Irish government to make that decision. But I hope that with the cooperation, unprecedented cooperation, that the Irish government has undertaken to give to the inquiry, it will provide absolutely vital information for the inquiry to get to the bottom of what happened.
Paul Kelner, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I hope the Secretary of State knows, my party and I are hugely supportive of his efforts to move beyond the Tories' failed Legacy Act, provided the legitimate concerns of our veterans are fully met. Can the Secretary of State detail specifically, either now or in writing later, with which veteran groups he has consulted on the wording of the bill, and which ones have currently expressed acceptance of the bill as currently drafted?
Well, I will very gladly, if I may, write to the honourable gentleman to set out the veterans' organisations that the government, myself, the Defence Secretary and the Armed Forces Minister have engaged in drawing up those protections, and I've already indicated to the House the groups we will continue to talk to as we take that work forward.
Matt Tobin.
Question number 5, please, Mr. Speaker.
The government's new partnership with the EU aims to deliver a broad range of economic benefits for Northern Ireland, including smoothing flows of trade, protecting the UK's internal market, reducing costs for businesses and benefiting firms who move agri-food and plants from Great Britain to Northern Ireland.
Matt Tobin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for his answer. Does he agree with me that aligning safety standards and cutting red tape for checks and paperwork is precisely the kind of support for growth and trade that this government promised to deliver for business when it was elected last year?
Well, I do agree with my honourable friend on that, and that is why the partnership agreement reached with the EU back in May was so widely welcomed in Northern Ireland, particularly by those in the agri-food sector, because as we take that forward and turn it into a full SPS agreement, it will bring enormous benefits to firms that are moving those products across the Irish Sea from Great Britain to Northern Ireland.
Robin Swan.
Which, Mr. Speaker, come the 1st of January, veterinary medicines in Northern Ireland will be reduced by 40% according to the current suppliers over there. What steps is the government taking to ensure the supply of veterinary medicines into Northern Ireland, which ensure animal health but also have a link into human health as well?
Well, as the honourable gentleman will be aware, we've had the Veterinary Medicines Working Group. We've been working very closely with the industry. We have set out 2 schemes, the Veterinary Medicines Health Situation Scheme and the Veterinary Medicines Internal Market Scheme, drawing on the cascade, and we are confident that that will ensure the continued supply of veterinary medicines from the 1st of January to vets and farmers and others who need them.
Joe White.
Question number 7, Mr. Speaker.
The Northern Ireland Troubles Bill will retain Part 4 of the 2023 Legacy Act, which includes provisions for memorialisation. I would welcome views and suggestions on how to take this forward, including on whether any new memorials should be established.
Joe White.
On the 5th of April 1979, an IRA sniper fired at an armoured vehicle as it entered Anderstown RUC station, killing Blues Royal Serviceman Anthony Dykes. My constituent, whose mother, Kathleen, now aged 94, has never let his memory go. She told me her son is a forgotten soldier. There are monuments for soldiers killed in Afghanistan and Iraq, but nothing for those who served in Northern Ireland. Kathleen is now very frail. I am her voice today, asking government to commit to a national memorial.
Well, first of all, could I express on behalf of the whole House our condolences to her on the loss of her son all those years ago. I would say that the names of those service personnel who died on deployment to Operation Banner are rightly listed on the Armed Forces Memorial at the National Memorial Arboretum as a lasting record of their sacrifice, and I don't know whether my honourable friend's constituent has had a chance to visit there. Perhaps it's something she might like to facilitate.
Father of the House, Sir Edmund Lee.
Many thousands of our brave troops served in Northern Ireland, and many gave their lives for peace and for our country. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that they deserve a permanent memorial, not some of them to be prosecuted?
Yeah. Well, as I indicated in answer to the earlier question, there is that memorial already at the National Memorial Arboretum. There are other places in which the service and sacrifice of those who served the state is recorded, including the RUC Memorial Garden. that I've had the opportunity to visit, and it was an extremely moving occasion as one looks at all of the names and remembers the huge sacrifice that all of those people made in defence of freedom in Northern Ireland.
Before I come to Prime Minister's questions, may I extend a warm welcome to the President of the National Council of Slovak Republic and his delegation, who are with us in the gallery today. And may I also welcome the new Chief Minister of St Helena. We now come to questions to Prime Minister Kit Malthouse.
Number one.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me start by congratulating Scotland on their magnificent victory last night, qualifying for the World Cup for the first time since 1998.
I didn't realise you were all Scottish MPs, Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, they qualified with fantastic goals, including a cracker from former Arsenal player Kieran Tierney, who was always a great favourite with the fans. Mr. Speaker, my thoughts are with the communities across the country affected by severe flooding, particularly in Monmouthshire. I've been liaising with the First Minister of Wales and want to thank all our emergency services for their response. Mr. Speaker, my thoughts are also with the family and loved one of Royal Fleet Auxiliary member James Elliott, who has sadly been lost. I know the contribution that personnel of the Royal Fleet Auxiliary make and the risks that they take in the line of duty. My thoughts, and I'm sure the thoughts of the whole House, are with those who knew him at this tragic and difficult time for them. Mr. Speaker, last Thursday I visited Anglesey to announce the construction of the country's first small modular reactor. That's the biggest investment in North Wales in a generation, creating more than 6,000 jobs. On Monday, we introduced the largest overhaul of the asylum policy in modern times, restoring control, fairness and creating safe and legal routes. And today I'm pleased to announce that inflation is coming down. There's more to do, but it's an important step. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Mr. Speaker, many of us are becoming concerned that technical or procedural manoeuvres outside of this House may be used to prevent Parliament reaching a decision on the terminally ill adults bill. Now, the government is neutral on the bill itself, but I presume it's not neutral on the issue of democracy or the primacy of this chamber. So, could the Prime Minister please reassure the House that the decision of elected members, and indeed the wishes and hopes of the vast majority of the people we serve, will not be frustrated in this way?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for his question? I know he feels strongly about this issue. As he says, the government is neutral on the passage of the bill. It is a matter of conscience, so there are different and respected views across Parliament, and it is for Parliament to decide in the end on any changes in this chamber. Scrutiny of the bill in the Lords is a matter for the Lords, but the government does have a responsibility to make sure that any legislation which passes through Parliament is workable, is effective and, of course, enforceable.
John Trickett.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. And the party opposite in government said that they would level up the country, but in fact they left the country divided. Half austerity, in deindustrialisation, stagnant wages, all took the heart, ripped the heart out of mining communities like the ones I represent. Everywhere you can see the legacy which the party opposite left. And how can it be right that the hard-working, loyal people in my constituency earn £400 a week or £20,000 a year less than people who live in Kensington? So will the Prime Minister now declare that it is the government's moral purpose to eliminate economic injustice, starting with the budget next week, announcing massive investment in the north and wherever else poverty and low pay raising its head?
Well, can I thank him for raising this important issue, because they laugh, but working people paid a very heavy price for 14 years of economic failure.
austerity damaged the economy and decimated public services. A botched Brexit deal stifled growth, and the reckless borrowing on the mini-budget saw mortgages and the cost of living soar. He's right to raise this issue. We're determined to tackle inequality. He'll be pleased to know that under this government wages are up, but we need to do more. We've had a pay increase for the 3.5 million lowest paid, and the Chancellor will deliver a budget based on Labour values.
Kevin Bainbridge, Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I associate our side of the House with the remarks the Prime Minister made about James Elliott? Can the Prime Minister tell us why his government is the first government in history to float increasing income tax rates only to then U-turn on it all after the actual budget?
Prime Minister. I'll inform you the budget's actually next week rather than after the budget. We've only got 1 week to go. But I can tell her it'll be a Labour budget, Mr. Speaker, with Labour values. That means we will concentrate on cutting NHS waiting lists, cutting debt and cutting the cost of living. And because of the decisions we've already made, inflation is down this morning. The Bank of England have upgraded growth. We've got a record £230 billion of investment into this country under this government.
Mr. Speaker, he says the budget is next week, but we read all about it in the papers. This is the first budget to unravel before it's even been delivered. The Chancellor's cluelessness, I'm afraid, is damaging the economy now. The Prime Minister needs to end this shambles. So can he confirm today that he won't break another promise by freezing income tax thresholds?
Mr. Speaker, the budget is 1 week today and we will lay out our plans. But what we won't do, Mr. Speaker, I've said what we will do in terms of protecting the NHS and public services. What we won't do is inflict austerity on the country as they did. It's caused huge damage. What we won't do is inflict a borrowing spree like Liz Truss did, also inflicted and did huge damage. Mr. Speaker, have they learnt anything? She's apparently got a golden economic rule, I think. So it's a very important rule, this golden rule. That there's this £47 billion of cuts with no detail. No wonder the Institute of Government says they're on very shaky foundations. They haven't listened and they haven't learned.
Mr. Speaker, it is quite clear that they are going to freeze thresholds. We didn't get a clear answer from them, but this is really important. Because in her budget speech last year, the Chancellor said, and I quote, "I am keeping every single promise on tax that I made in our manifesto. So there will be no extension of the freeze in income tax and national insurance thresholds." Why was freezing thresholds a breach of the manifesto last year, but it isn't this year?
Mr. Speaker, every week she comes along and speculates and distorts. Last year, Mr. Speaker, last year they predicted recession. And what did we get? The fastest growing economy in the G7 in the first half of the year. They opposed NHS investment, and what do we get? 5 million extra appointments in the first year of a Labour government. They tried growing the economy with millions on NHS waiting lists, with our schools crumbling and holes in our road. It didn't work. What do they want to do now? Go back to the same failed experiment.
Mr. Speaker, he talks about speculation. The only people who've been speculating are his government every single day for the last 3 months. And he mentioned inflation in his last answer. Inflation has nearly doubled since they came into office. He wants a round of applause because it's come down a little bit. I will remind him that food inflation is up 4.9%. That is making life miserable for all of those people out there. But let's go back to thresholds, because this is important. When the Chancellor made that promise to unfreeze the thresholds, it wasn't an off-the-cuff comment. She said it on the floor of this House in her budget speech. That was a deliberate statement of government policy. So if she breaks such a clear promise, how can the public trust a word that she says next week?
Mr. Speaker, she talks about inflation. It went to 11% on those. 11%. And the country is still paying the price. Inflation is down this morning, wages are up, and we've had 5 interest rate cuts, and that's because our fiscal rules are ironclad. And the Leader of the Opposition and the party officers have no credibility on the economy. She was Treasury Minister during the worst decline in living standards on record. And she said that Liz Truss got the mini-budget 100% right. Not much room for flexibility there. 100%, that's pretty full marks, Mr. Speaker. She might want to tell us if that's still her position, 100% right for Liz Truss.
Mr. Speaker, I was Treasury Minister at the height of the pandemic. We cleaned up that mess. Maybe he could clean up some of his own mess. And I'm going to repeat what the Chancellor said, because it's quite clear that the whole front bench has forgotten. She said, "I have come to the conclusion that extending the threshold freeze would hurt working people. It would take more money out of their pay slips, and yet that's what they're planning to do next week." And all of this speculation is having real-world consequences. Just this morning, the UK chair of ExxonMobil said, and I quote, "The government needs to understand that the whole industrial base of the UK is at risk unless they wake up and realise the damage their economic policies are doing." Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister tell us, is the loss of UK industry the price the country has to pay for having a clueless Chancellor?
Mr. Speaker, let me just say about ExxonMobil, it is a difficult time for the workforce there, and we must focus on supporting them. We've been meeting the company for over 6 months and explored every possible reasonable avenue. They've been facing losses for the last 5 years. It's best to do the detail before you chunter. And they're currently losing £1 million a week. But she talks about policy and approach. On energy policy, she follows reform. On the European Convention, she follows the man who wants her job. And when her shadow minister said we should deport people lawfully here to achieve cultural coherence, she pretended that it didn't happen. I could go on. She was the Trade Secretary that didn't sign any trade deals. Cheerleader for the mini-budget, cheerleader for open borders, and when they were crashing the economy, botching Brexit and running down the NHS, she was right at the centre. She hasn't got an ounce of credibility.
Mr. Speaker, on energy policy, what we are doing is listening to industry. What happened, I had a round table.
Mr. Slinger, please. We don't want to have to sling you out.
Mr. Speaker, just this morning, we heard from the chair of one of our largest energy companies. Last week, I had a roundtable with energy companies, and what they had to say about this Prime Minister and his energy secretary is unprintable. They are absolutely furious. Our oil and gas industry is dying, and he's standing there saying he had meetings. People out there are struggling, Mr. Speaker. The budget chaos is causing real anxiety. People aren't buying houses, businesses aren't hiring, and they are cancelling investment decisions. 2 weeks ago, the Chancellor called a ridiculous press conference to blame everyone else for her having to raise income tax. Then last week, she U-turned on her own U-turn. Instead, we can see they're planning to freeze income tax thresholds, something she said last year would be a breach of their manifesto. They are making it up as they go along. Doesn't the country deserve better than government by guesswork?
Mr. Speaker, either we renew our country with Labour or we go back to austerity 2.0 with reform of the Tories. They left waiting lists at record highs, almost 1 million more children in poverty, and they wrecked our public services. She comes here to talk down the country. We're turning the page. More NHS appointments, free breakfast clubs, free childcare, more homes and better public services. That's what we're fighting for, a Britain built for all.
Lord Hatton.
Mr. Speaker, standing in the heart of Weymouth, the Rectory is an iconic building. Formerly a theatre, once a bustling cinema and then a popular pub as well. And yet for more than a decade this building has stood empty. We want to turn this building into a thriving centre for arts and culture, hosting exhibitions and celebrating everything that makes Weymouth unique. So will the Prime Minister work with me and all the key players on the ground to revitalise the Rectory and reopen this fantastic building for our town?
Prime Minister.
Well, my honourable friend is a brilliant champion for South Dorset, and he's right to champion revitalising our high streets. The Minister for Heritage would be delighted to discuss how we can get this iconic building reopened as he wants. I'm pleased that Weymouth secured £20 million in Pride in Place funding giving his community the power and resources to make a real difference to people's lives.
Sir David, Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's opening remarks? And can I also join with him in congratulating Scotland on their amazing win against Denmark and wish them well in the World Cup? And can I also say I hope Wales soon qualifies to join England and Scotland? But Mr. Speaker, every year there are more than 300 suicides related to problem gambling. It affects hundreds of thousands of families, tearing them apart. Meanwhile, online gambling firms are taking in record revenues of over £7 billion a year. Now, ITV News are reporting that one of them, Sky Bet, is moving its headquarters to Malta so it can save tens of millions of pounds in corporation tax. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that it's time that we tax them on their UK profits so these online gambling firms don't escape wherever they are registered for tax?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I join him on wishing Wales well and Northern Ireland? I'd like to see all 4 nations in the finals. But look, he raises the really important issue of suicide, and it's Men's Health Day, and it is really important. And I think the whole House would want to work together on anything that can prevent suicide. I think if all of us think about individuals we may know who lost their lives through suicide, it's something that touches almost every one of us and all of our families as well. We will, of course, look at the link between suicide and gambling and take whatever measures we can to reduce suicide. It's a very important issue.
Sir David.
For his reply, we look forward to the government coming forward with action on that. On another domestic matter, Mr. Speaker, next to the River Cherwell in Oxfordshire, a field is now covered in an enormous mound of rubbish, 150 metres long and up to 12 metres high. The water is now lapping against the waste and carrying it into the river. It's just one of many sites, Mr. Speaker, where organised criminal gangs are illegally dumping their waste onto our countryside and getting away with it. This is a shocking environmental emergency. So will he instruct the Environment Agency to clean it up now?
Firstly, these are utterly appalling scenes. Utterly appalling. A criminal investigation, as he knows, is underway, and specialist officers are tracking down those responsible. The Environmental Agency, in answer to his question, will use all available powers to make sure that the perpetrators cover the cost of the clean-up, which must now follow. We have boosted the Environment Agency's budget for tackling waste crime by 50%, given councils new powers to seize and crush fly tippers' vehicles, and lawbreakers can now face up to 5 years in jail.
Dominic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Immigration is the #1 issue on doorsteps of Bristol North East. Most people will ask me about it. They want a firm, but also fair approach, but have been let down over many years. Controlling our borders and knowing who comes is essential, not least to integration. Mr. Speaker, what can the Prime Minister say to my constituents in Bristol North East that will give them assurance that the reforms that the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary are proposing, which I support, will be firm, but will also be fair?
Prime Minister.
I'm proud, Mr. Speaker, to lead an open, tolerant, generous country. To maintain that principle, we must restore order and control, fix the utterly broken system left by the party opposite, and end the division that others seek to exploit. That does include creating safe and legal routes, recognising those who contribute, integrate and strengthen our society, while at the same time reducing illegal arrivals and removing those with no right to be here. That is a fair, progressive system that meets modern challenges.
Jim Allister.
Mr. Speaker, the governments of France, Germany and the United States have all extracted from Libya compensation for their citizens who were affected by Gaddafi-led terrorism across the world. Why, Prime Minister, is the British government continuing to fail United Kingdom citizens who suffered to a huge extent through the importation of arms and, in particular, the tons of Semtex that Gaddafi supplied to the IRA, giving rise to Enniskillen, to Warrington, to the Baltic Exchange and multiple others. Why is no compensation being extracted from Libya for our citizens when it can be done for others? And will the Prime Minister at least meet representatives of the almost forgotten but still campaigning families for those affected by Gaddafi's terrorism?
Well,
Prime Minister.
So many suffer from Gaddafi, and he's absolutely right to raise this really serious issue, and we're working hard on it. I'll absolutely make sure that the meeting he asks for is set up with the relevant minister so that we can give the full position and take on board what they have to say.
Luke Charters.
On International Men's Day and in the spirit of Movember, I want to be open about my own past mental health challenges in the hope that it might encourage other men to do the same. And during the traumatic birth of my first son, I nearly lost my wife, and a dark cloud settled over me. A cloud lifted through conversation and support, and through the safe arrival of my second son, and bright days lie ahead. I'm joined in the gallery today by Mike from York Menfulness, a fantastic charity giving men a place to talk. So will the Prime Minister, as a dad himself, agree with me that strength as a man means being open about our emotions and that we should never face into challenges on our own?
Can I thank him for his honesty? It's never easy to stand up and say what he's just said. And I hope he understands just how important that is for others who will be suffering, who will be inspired to be able to talk openly about their experiences and, importantly, get the help that they need. I'm really proud to publish the first ever men's health strategy today to tackle challenges that disproportionately affect men, including certain cancers and suicide, which is tragically the biggest killer of those men under 50. So we will invest millions in helping more men access mental health support, better care for former minors, and rolling out at-home blood tests to tackle prostate cancer. But I do thank him for speaking out. I think it's so important, it's so brave. It's been done across the House. This isn't a party political issue, but it's always very powerful when it's done, and it's a model for all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given the government's desire to improve educational outcomes and the well-being of our children, it is ignoring the elephant in the room. This morning I hosted a really powerful roundtable with 3 secondary head teachers who spoke about the transformational effect that a complete ban on smartphones in their schools had had. Improved behaviour, increased focus, far fewer safeguarding issues, and most importantly, happier children. But for them it has been really hard won, and it's sunk a huge amount of time. So will the Prime Minister tell me and the thousands of head teachers out there who are crying out for this change why his government won't back them with a ban on smartphones in schools?
Prime Minister.
I thank her for a question. It's a really important question. I've got teenage children in secondary school, and I know it's an issue of concern to parents and teachers. The reality of the statistics are that the vast majority of schools already ban smartphones at school. They allow children to bring their phones to schools, but they ban them in school time in lessons. Of course, we will always keep this under review. We've got to take steps that will be effective. I agree with the sentiment of what she's putting to me. We need to deal with it effectively.
Andrew Peggs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the worst legacies of the last Conservative government was the collapse in apprenticeships for young people in places such as Peterborough, shutting a generation out of opportunity. Mr. Speaker, my city is determined to turn that around, with places like Peterborough College, like many of our colleges, leading the charge. Whilst I welcome the government's reform, I still speak to too many young people who can't access the training they need to rebuild Britain. Will the Prime Minister set out what more we can do together to ensure Peterborough's young people get the good jobs and apprenticeships they deserve?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank him. His dedicated campaign means Peterborough has one of the first youth guarantee pilots in the country. Mr. Speaker, we inherited an awful situation where almost 1 million young people were not earning or learning. We refuse to accept that. That's why we're delivering the the new youth guarantee, investing a record £3 billion into apprenticeships and increasing the national minimum wage for 16 to 20-year-olds. The Reform and the Tories say the minimum wage is too high. They're totally wrong. We're going to focus on every young person to give them the chance to succeed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whilst the Labour front bench continue to peddle their own form of dog whistle politics, Reform UK... Reform UK are cracking on with the day job. Our reform-led councils are reform...
Can I just say, you might say it's the way he tells them, but it might be worse, it's the way I tell them. Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our reform-led councils have already identified savings of over £330 million in the first 6 months. And the Prime Minister may shake his head propped up by these gullible backbenchers, but here's the challenge. Will he guarantee, will he ensure that all the cancelled elections from this year and the proposed local elections for next year will go ahead in May 2026? Go on, be a man.
I didn't realise he's quite so good at stand-up comedy. Mr. Speaker, he talks about dog whistle. Last week, his leader said he didn't have time to condemn the racist comments of his fellow MP for Runcorn. He also said he didn't have time to condemn his party calling children in care evil. He didn't have time. I wonder if he can ask his leader next door to him whether he's got time for his explanation for the stories in today's papers.
Mr. Speaker, over the summer, large quantities of illegal cigarettes were seized in shops in my Carlisle constituency. However, many of those shops were reopened the very next day. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that we have to make it easier for these shops to be closed down permanently so we put out of business forever these criminal networks?
Prime Minister. Can I thank her for raising this? Because there's been a surge in response to illegal shops selling products they shouldn't be selling and not paying their taxes. It's very important. Raids in October, Mr. Speaker, saw over 900 arrests, almost £11 million of criminal profits were seized, and almost £3 million of illegal gear was destroyed. We need to go further to protect our high streets. That's why we're giving councils powers to prevent certain shops from even opening, supporting them to deal with unwanted shops, and through the tobacco and vapes bill, cracking down on rogue retailers who break the law.
Josh Bubble. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Eastbourne resident Pam was given a cheque for £125,000 by her terminally ill partner, which she went on to cash in. But an error by the bank, Barclays, meant that only £125 was deposited. Barclays admitted the error and then said that they will compensate her for £250 for the inconvenience caused. Will the Prime Minister work with me to ensure that Barclays Bank pays Pam the compensation that she needs and deserves? And while we're here, will he commit to imposing a windfall tax on the banks like Barclays on their excess profits to bring bills down for residents struggling? Prime Minister.
The case of his constituent Pam is staggeringly bad, absolutely terrible. If he could provide me with the full details of it, I will make sure that the government joins him in doing whatever we can in relation to his constituent. And before I sit down, may I take a moment to send my warmest congratulations to the honourable member on getting engaged, I think, on Thursday. The proposal, I think, was right here in Parliament. You never know what you might find in this dispatch box. But on behalf of my party, and actually I'm sure the whole House, can I wish him and Connor a lifetime of happiness.
Connor Naismith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Crewe Railway Station is the gateway to the north and indeed the shop window for my constituency, with an average annual footfall of 4.5 million people. I am working with Cheshire East Council on ambitious plans for Crewe 360 to deliver much needed investment into the station and into the land around the station, and we want to adopt the Railway Industry Association's Station Investment Zone proposals, which could deliver much needed improvements in transport, housing, regeneration and economic growth. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that Crewe would make a perfect pilot for these proposals? And will he agree to work with me to bring government departments around the table so that we can make these plans a reality?
Minister.
Well, I thank him for his question. Because of our actions, Mr. Speaker, house building near stations like Crewe will now be a default yes. That means tens of thousands of homes delivered far sooner for families with great transport links as standard. I'll make sure that he meets the relevant ministers to drive forward growth. Every step we've taken to deliver more homes has been opposed by the parties opposite. They're the blockers. Labour are the builders.
James McMurdo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is an open secret that the gig economy is a magnet for organised crime and illegal workers. As Christmas approaches and demand increases, so do the associated risks. Will the Prime Minister please explain why enforcement in this area is so low and what he will do to restore order?
Well, we're delivering a record crackdown on illegal working in the gig economy, expanding the right to work and facial recognition checks, which are really important. We're also introducing a new criminal offence of trespassing with intent to commit a crime through the Place and Criming Bill.
Mr. Coteau.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Based on their reactions, care or remember, but every day I see the cost to my constituents in Bournemouth West of years of cuts to public services. Youth services gone, neighbourhood policing decimated, no NHS dentist appointments. So can the Prime Minister confirm there will be no return to austerity under this Labour government?
I certainly can. But the austerity that they imposed on the country destroyed our public services, and we're still paying the price. We'll be cutting waiting lists, cutting the debt and cutting the cost of living. Fair choices to secure Britain's future, not a return to the failure of the party opposite.
Jack Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has expressed sincere regret for appointing David Cogan to the Independent Football Regulator. Will he now put on record the full amount Mr. Cogan has donated to his leadership campaign and his party, any hospitality he's received, and whether he declared these interests before appointing him?
Prime Minister.
They were all declared properly.
Not the amount.
Mr. Speaker, this Friday we commemorate the 51st anniversary of the Birmingham pub bombings, in which 21 people lost their lives in what is still the largest unsolved murder in our history. The families do not believe that the approach set out by the government will discover the truth and that only a public inquiry will do. Can we now have the meetings in order to hear the families' concerns direct and agree an approach that will command not just confidence but will find the truth of who bombed Birmingham?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I extend my deepest sympathies that remain with the bereaved and survivors of the horrific pub bombing in Birmingham in 1974. We do believe the most appropriate route is through the Independent Commission for Reconciliation and Information Recovery, but Honourable Friend has raised this issue directly with me, and of course I'll make sure that the relevant meeting is set up so that he and the families can put their point of view for us to consider.
Mr.
Speaker, you in the Chamber will be well aware that I represent the biggest and most remote constituency in the UK. And I'm bound to say, Mr. Speaker, that in it, bank branches are becoming rarer than sightings of the Loch Ness Monster. We have no banks at all in the huge county of Sutherland. Now, we have legislation that provides for access to cash, but what we don't have is legislation that provides for face-to-face banking services. So I'd be deeply grateful if the Prime Minister would ask the Treasury to meet with me to discuss how we might update the Financial Services and Markets Act to include some form of access to cash provision that would preserve face-to-face banking for my constituents and other remote areas.
Mr. Speaker, I know how important face-to-face banking is to local communities. As he knows, we're rolling out banking hubs. Decisions over location are taken independently, but they should be rolled out wherever there is a need for one. And of course, there's more to come. I will, in answer to his question, make sure that he gets the meeting that he requests so that we can have a look at the proposal.
Afzal Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
As the Prime Minister is aware, November marks Islamophobia Awareness Month. This Labour government has shown a steadfast commitment to supporting Muslim communities, particularly through consulting on the definition of Islamophobia. Given anti-Muslim hate is at record levels in the UK, can the Prime Minister outline the steps this government will take to tackle a rising level of racism, xenophobia against the Muslims in Britain?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for raising this important issue? He's always been a strong champion on this. Anti-Muslim hatred is abhorrent, Mr. Speaker, and has no place in our society. And the increase in incidents must be addressed. It's why we're increasing funding to protect mosques and Muslim faith schools across the country. It's why we've announced a new fund to monitor anti-Muslim hatred and support victims. And we continue to work on the definition of anti-Muslim hatred.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Everyone who cares about media independence and freedom will be relieved that, that Redbird have recognised that they cannot run the Telegraph. But there are serious concerns that they will burden the paper with unsustainable debt if the title is sold for less than £500 million. So, will the Prime Minister step in to prevent this from happening and enable a sale at a lower price if necessary, without this toxic debt burden?
Prime Minister.
Well, he raises a serious issue. I'm not quite sure what he's asking the government to do. To step in and nationalise it, I don't think would be the right thing.
Whereas, Mr. Speaker, on the 5th of March at the dispatch box, the Prime Minister said these words: "We do recognise Cornish national minority status, not just the proud language, the history and the culture of Cornwall, but its bright future. Since then, I've repeatedly asked ministers for Cornwall's unique place on this island to be recognised through devolution. When the devolution bill comes back to the House next week, will the Prime Minister help me explicitly enshrine Cornish devolution and Cornish national minority status in that bill?"
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for his question? Of course, he has raised this issue with me on a number of occasions already. He's a great champion for Cornwall. We will ensure that Cornwall's national minority status is safeguarded in any future devolution arrangements. We have provided £500,000 to support distinctive Cornish culture, including the Cornish language.
Sir David.
The Prime Minister knows that last week 9 four-star generals made plain that yesterday's Northern Ireland bill is doing harm to the British Army already. Most acute damage is being felt by the Special Air Service. It's already affecting their recruitment, their retention, their morale and their operational effectiveness. As a result, lawyers acting for the SAS Regimental Association have sent a letter before action to the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. I know of no precedent for this in the entire history of the British Army, and it's because it's so important. It reflects how important it is. So can I make a plea to the Prime Minister? Will he involve himself personally to make sure that 60, 70, 80-year-old soldiers who have carried out actions which most of us would view as heroic are not persecuted in the coming years? Because now it's a matter not of national security, but of national honour.
Can I thank him for his question and reassure him on the protections that he seeks for veterans, because it is a very important issue and he's continually and rightly raised it. There will be protection from repeat investigations, so the Commission doesn't go over old ground without compelling reasons. There will be protection from cold calling and protection in old age, so that elderly veterans are respected. And those who do contribute to the legacy process will have a right to anonymity, a right to stay at home to give evidence remotely, and a right to be heard through the Commission. That is the work that we're doing, and I'm happy to discuss it further with him.
To end on the subject, no doubt we can expect is Scotland's victory total correct.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When the Prime Minister next meets with the President of the United States, can he ask him if he knows any reasonably priced hotels near the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, where the World Cup final is to be held? And as we are about to provide the biggest boost to whisky exports since our trade deal was signed, can he ask the Chancellor to gently consider excise duties next week so we Scots can continue celebrating at reasonable prices?
Prime Minister.
I thank him for his question. On the question of whisky, it is important that we do everything we can to support whisky. I'm really pleased with the progress we're making with the United States and, of course, with India as well under the trade deal. I'll continue to discuss what more we can do with him.
That completes Prime Minister's questions.